Okay, putting together the pants. Step one was I sewed the two sides together and then I ironed out the seam. Now, what I did not do, I did not sew the inner seam, the inseam. You leave that undone until the very end, and that's so you can get a tight fit. Now, this is the outer edge, but notice this is the flap where the button goes. All the buttons, holes will be sewn right here. Notice the button flap that's ironed on the inside, so it looks like that after you iron it. Oh, and I decided to make this video after I started sewing, so sorry, pieces are together. All right, next you have the waistband. Now the thin area goes toward the back. The front area, the thicker area, the wider area goes up front. This is where the buttons are going to be, the button holes. Now I left a little overhangy part right here because that's where the button holes are going to go, or the buttons, one of the two. Now there is a strange shape that's actually for the flap cover. Think of it here, and you'll see in a minute, but this is the flap. Will end up going right here. Now, I sewed this together and ironed this also flat seam. It doesn't look like it now. Now, it will not be, the pants are going to be longer than the waistband. What you do is you have to, toward the end, this half of the outer seam, toward the back, you gather them like that right there, and you do some pleats or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. And next step, as you can see here, you get pieces of linen on the inside. So I sewed them like so. And I had it so it covers up the seam on the lower part. Now here's that odd shaped flap, and you can see it right there again. But here's how it looks. This is the overall flap for the breeches. We have the fall front. That's the fall, and so this flap is what covers a little area there. Oh, and everything is rough edge. You don't do anything because the wool is very good and it's tight enough that you can do a rough edge all the way around. Okay, next up, these little flaps that cover the fall front of the pants. I press back the seams all the way around, and then you're going to sew them right there. Oh, I'll fix that. Anyway, right there. Am I being watched? I think I'm being watched. For this piece, the I don't know what you want to call them. I call it the toe caps or whatever. This is the outer. This is not the inside. This is the outside. So you're literally just going to lay it over the top and sew it onto it. You're not going to have to double over. All right, when you put this on here, you're going to have to do it. You got to spread it out. As you can see, I'm trying. Well, let me put the edge over here. Let you see an edge. So you have to spread it out so it looks like that. Because you sew where it's all just flat, you won't be spreading out on your leg. So same thing over here. If this was the edge, you'd have to get it all the way to the end like that, which means your middle is going to be kind of bunched up, but it'll look right when you put your foot in it. One step you got to do when you started sewing, remember you didn't do the inseam. You left it wide open. So what you do is you pin the inseam tight to your body, and you're going to sew where the pins are. That way it's a good fit, because it's got to be a tight fit. I did this by turning it inside out. Now on the flaps here, every 2 inches I put a buttonhole. I'm going to use a chisel to punch out the buttonhole. Now on the other side, I don't know if you can see it or not, you sew that flap so it's doubled. What this does, it reinforces the button side of the gaiter. Now both sides will come together, but what you have to do is at a certain point you have to overlap so that they're on top of each other like this. Now this area right here, what you do is up, I guess, I don't know, I have to look at originals. That is a square, but here is an older pair of pants, which is also pants. It's a pattern from Carl Johnson. And you notice in this one, there is a triangular looking device, but basically that's it. You got to sew up the end so it does overlap, otherwise the buttons won't work. Next we have the fall front, so I'm pinning the lining into the fall front and sewing it. And of course I ironed back, well, heck, let me do this end. There you go. I ironed back the edges, and I start at the top, work my way down. Get him. The cute part of the film. Anyway, all right, this is a second, I guess, tightening is what we're doing. We're marking the inseam a second time because it wasn't tightened up the first time. So you might have to adjust your pants after you're almost through, and I'm almost through now. All right. Okay, one thing about the buttons, I don't know if this is coming up very well, but one side is a concave side, a rounded side, and one side is a flat side. So when you sew it, concave side down, that way when you do use your buttonhole, it gets underneath it and holds it in place. If you fold it the flat side down, it'll keep slipping out whenever you try to use your buttonhole. So remember, flat side up, concave side down. All right, here's the inner flap. You can see I did the buttonholes here. But the inner flap, you only sew it down to about where the wool is. But right here, this area, you don't sew down. You sew so it doesn't fray, but then you sew down when it reaches the seam on the pants. So you sew that down, but you leave this open because you don't need to sew it down. Because if you do, there'll be like little sew marks on the outside. You don't want that. This is the final thing. What I did was I pulled tight. After I put the buttons on, I pulled it tight, wearing it inside out, and sewed the bottom again. And this is the final product, where the sides are supposed to be tight, not all baggy. The other thing is right here, focus right here. Right here, where to sew this is you just flip it up, and it should be right along the line of the, I don't know what you want to call it, but a line of where the inner flaps come together. But that's where you sew the two buttons. And that's it. That's the finished product of how to do Carl Johnson's brown trousers. Ta-da!